I'm Ariadne. I'm 16 years old and I'm from Greece.
Hi, I'm Vanessa Nakate, 23 years old from Uganda.
I'm Vega. I am 16 years old. I'm from Sweden, but I live in the Netherlands right now.
Yes, hello. I'm Acham Evelyn. Yes, and I'm a climate activist from Uganda.
Would you want to tell us how, like, of course, if you don't feel comfortable about talking what happened in Davos, you don't have to talk about it, just saying. So, but if you do, do you want to tell us how you felt and how everything after that came together and what you were thinking after that happened?
First of all, thank you for having me here. It's really amazing and I appreciate that. About what happened in Davos, of course, it made me feel so frustrated because I wasn't expecting it. First of all, we already had an issue of a few activists in Davos during the World Economic Forum. And personally, I didn't meet any activists from the African countries. I don't know if there were any. So that already was very disturbing because of the misrepresentation and the underrepresentation. So I tried my best to try as much as possible to, help tell what is happening in Africa, what is happening in different countries. And when I got the opportunity to speak at the press conference, I thought it would be a good way of getting the message out, because there are so many journalists, and I believe that they would be interested in listening to us as activists and reporting about the issues that are affecting us. Most times we say that we still have time to address this issue, but I don't think there is time if people are already dying. I believe that we already lost time the moment people started dying as a result of climate change. So during the press conference, I tried as much as possible, to even tell the media to please report what we are saying, because of their bias and how they're selective on what they report. And I thought that would make them actually, report what we were talking about or what I was talking about. But it was so sad that just a few hours later, I remember we were from the climate strike in Davos. And I was just reading through on Twitter, trying to see everything that was written about the press conference, about the activities in Davos. And I was really surprised to see the article. First of all, I thought the photo could not fit because it had been shared to Twitter. So I was really moved to read about the article and see if the photo is maybe full on the platform, like on the website. But unfortunately, I found that the photo was still, cropped, and I read through the article, and still no message, was written about anything that I had said. And I remember reading the headline of the article. It was saying, climate activists speak at a press conference, and then I see Greta's name, I see Luisa, I see Lukina and Isabel, and I felt so frustrated not having seen actually my name on the list. At least a photo would be understandable, but even the name or even any quote from what I had said. So I really found it so disturbing, because people in Africa are trying as much as possible to get their voices heard, to get their stories heard, to talk about the impacts that they face in their communities. But then I had got the opportunity to do that. Not everyone from Africa gets, those opportunities, but I had got that opportunity, and I just saw it being swept away like a flood, because everything felt like I had wasted my time coming to Davos. I had wasted my time being at the press conference, because at the end of it all, none of the stories were told, or none of the message was brought out. Like, it was so very, very disturbing. I remember my friends, the ones I was with at the Arctic base camp, after the strike, we decided to go for lunch, and it was so sad. I didn't know how to tell them because I was close to, tears, as close to breaking down, because I found it so bad and so discriminating and so mean. So I decided to tell them about it, and they felt so, like, they couldn't believe it. It wasn't real. I mean, this is 2020. We don't expect to see such things happening right now. We thought those things, racism was way back, but it is sad to see that it's still happening here. That's why my first reaction when I saw the article was to ask them why they had done it, because over the time of my activism, I had seen and watched people of color complain about how their stories are not told by journalists, how journalists don't fully report what they need to report, how media is so biased about the stories they report. So it wasn't a shock to me, and I felt like this was the nail in the coffin. So I had to ask them why they had done something like that. And honestly, I really didn't expect it to go so viral, but when it did, it made me realize that there is power in speaking up when you feel like something is wrong. Yeah.
That is, wow. Okay. And so now that happened to you, do you feel stronger now? Do you feel like you can make more of a difference, or do you think that like teared you down?
Actually, it made me more stronger. Maybe the intention was to make me weaker and to give up, but in the end it made me stronger, and it also increased on my platform. My platform was not that big, but I tried as much as possible to reach people, even with a small platform. But then after this incident, my platform grew bigger, and it actually, helps to, tell other people's stories and talk about their activism. When I share their work on my social media, it helps like more people to see what they're doing. So I feel like something good came out of it, because actually it puts the African voice on the map.
The next thing I want to ask you is how you started climate activism.
Becoming a climate activist was a process for me. It's not something that I was told to do or something that I even knew about. I remember in the year 2018, I really wanted to do something that could cause change in the lives of the people in my community and in my country. And Evelyn knows that very well. I always told her, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this, but I just didn't know exactly what to do. So I just started carrying out research to understand the problems that people face in our country. And of course, there are quite a number of them. Violence violence of women or children, corruption, unemployment being one of the major problems. And I was really surprised to find climate change as one of those problems, because I have been in school, and if you were to ask any student in school right now in my country what climate change is, they would just tell you the theory that has been taught in school, but they actually don't know the practical bit of it. They don't know the reality of climate change. They don't know that it is here right now, and it's already affecting people. So when I found out that climate change was here and yet school was teaching something completely different, I decided to read more about it, to understand the causes and the impacts. I don't remember studying much of sciences. They were never something I would really love to do, but I read more about it, and I understood the causes. I got to know what global warming actually means, not the global warming that is taught in class. I got to know about temperatures and all that stuff. So I remember telling my friend about it, and they're like, maybe this is something that you could do, maybe this is something that you can work on. And I remember some news I had watched where they used to talk about people, for example, in the Mount Elgon area, how they experience flooding and landslides that destroy their property, destroy their homes, and destroy their farms and kill people as well, because with these landslides, people are buried in the ground. So when I realized that some of those things were actually happening right now, I decided to read more about climate change and see how change can be brought about. I'm a young person. I don't have any resources. Even at that time, I didn't have any resources that would really help people in those areas. But I realized that there is a way that you can help through a voice. And through my research on how to create awareness of problems in society, that is when I found out about the Fridays for Future movement. And I thought that it's something that, I would do, and maybe something that would help people in some way. But personally, I'm not so. I grew up as a very shy person, so it really took me time to decide to go to the streets. I remember I found out about Fridays for Future in 2018, but my actual activism started in 2019 because I was really scared of going to the streets. But then one day I just woke up and I'm like, just do this. And yeah, this is where I am right now.
We're very glad that you did. So, Acham, could you please tell us again the story of how you started climate activism?
So I started climate activism last year, towards the end of last year. That's when I had my first strike with Vanessa. Yes, and ever since then I've been actively involved. I've been going to the streets, strike from home. Yeah, and it's been a very great experience doing climate activism, because you feel like you're creating change, you feel like you're impacting lives, because very many people are not aware of what's going on in our environment. They just see the temperatures going so high and they don't understand, they don't know. In the African culture, someone will feel like, this is normal, like maybe this year is a year of heat, this year is a year of too much rain. They'll not understand that it's actually the activities that they're carrying out that are affecting the environment. So as I feel so happy, I feel so privileged to be part of this movement, because it's actually creating change in the nearby future. I believe very many people will join us and they'll understand, and the more we create awareness, the more people will understand the kind of environment they're living in and what they have to do to change whatever is going on, whatever is not going right. Yeah, so we've been striking with Vanessa. Sometimes I do the strikes alone. Yeah, and some of the challenges we've experienced in our strikes have been the negative reception from the media, and also some people who are negative about some other concerned people who are negative about everything, like the people who are in charge of the activities that are destroying our environment, like the owners of factories, most people who own cars. Of course, most people own cars, and yeah, they also contribute to they contribute to polluting the environment. Yeah.
What kind of actions do you guys do? So I know you strike weekly, right?
Yes, we strike weekly.
Yeah.
And how big are your weekly strikes?
First of all, in our country, it's not so easy to, hold massive strikes. It's not very easy to get permits for strikes, and they don't just accept any kind of gathering, maybe in the city areas or just anywhere, because of the crazy deployment of security everywhere. So it is so complicated to have those massive strikes, and even the smaller strikes, it is risky in a way, because we've had smaller strikes and we've had issues with police authorities like twice. And I think the worst one was the second experience, and that was this year, where they actually wanted to arrest us because we didn't have any permits, we didn't ask for permission. But the truth is, even when you ask for the permits, they won't give them to you, because it's not like we have any registered organization, maybe big organization that we work with that will easily get for us permit. So we just go out there as activists every Friday to do the strikes in different locations, and it's not as big as we see in Europe or in other countries in the Western region. But it doesn't mean that the climate activism in my country, Uganda, or in any other African countries is less in a way, because sometimes we try to make it more impactful by going to schools and teaching the young students about climate change and what they need to do and how it's important for them to fight for their future, and what they need to do, what they need to tell their parents when they go back home from school about how they can join in climate activism. And then the other thing, in Uganda, the way schools are is not the same way the schools are in maybe Western countries. We have authority at school gates. The school gates are always locked. So literally, you can't just walk out of school. It should either call for suspension or expulsion, and many students fear that, because we are in a country where they believe that education is the key to success. So that's how we've been raised, to think that everything is about education. It is very hard to convince a student to rebel against authority, or to maybe jump over a fence that would be very risky for them to join climate activism, and yet they will have to be punished at home. So it is something that's so complicated to do in a country like ours, because of how the culture and how the system is here. It's completely different. So we try as much as possible to do the strikes in a small numbers, but in a more impactful way. That's why we try to share on social media, so we can have a few people maybe striking in Kampala, then a few people striking in Namgongo, where Acham comes from. That is where she stays, so she holds the strikes from that side in Namgongo. So we can have someone striking from Chireka, we have someone striking from Gaza, to try and spread the message across, even in the small numbers, because it's so risky, doing it in very large numbers. Yeah.
You said that you go to schools and somehow and also try to educate children on climate change and what they can do. Do you do any other action like this? For example, in Greece, we do clothes swaps to show the impact that the clothes industries and fast fashion industry has on the environmental issue. We also do cleanups, so we go to parks or we go to beaches and clean up the plastic and the trash and sort it to recycling. Do you guys do different actions, or the strikes and the education, which is really important?
Yeah, we do a number of activities. We also do cleanups. Maybe Acham can talk about the cleanups where we go to places and just get to engage with the people in those communities, because we believe that's an easier way of reaching out to them and empowering them and talking to them. But I would prefer if Acham talked about the cleaning bit. I'm speaking too much.
Okay, about the cleaning, we go to places like markets, because in Uganda, the most places where people dump a lot of garbage are the markets. First of all, you find a lot of garbage, you find a lot of litter. So we draw like a plan, then go to a place, like maybe for example you choose Chitintale market, then you go and pick litter, you literally clean for them. You tell them today we are doing the cleaning. Then after cleaning, you preach to them about climate change. You tell them about the danger of dumping litter everywhere and what impact it's going to cause in your environment. Yeah, so that's the other activity we do besides the school strikes. Yeah, and also to enlighten more about the school strikes, I think the reason why we concentrate so much on school strikes because we believe that the children, like, their minds are still very young. Their minds are still very young. They are brave. So when we start this from the kids, like a child can easily go back home and tell mommy, you know what? This and this is bad. Mommy, you know what? Like a kid is so innocent. Whatever they say is so innocent and it's so genuine. So if a kid came back home and told the parents about climate change, this would really like touch someone's heart. So that's why we started from the young kids at school, and then we extend it to other places. Yeah.
Especially,
Then,
go on.
Oh, no, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, because you told us earlier that in school you don't really know about the dangers of climate change and that it's already here. So it's especially important to tell the kids what is actually going on so that they can also spread their message.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say?
No, I just.
Sorry, Vega, go ahead.
I think it's really inspiring that you're helping build eco-friendly communities from the ground up. That's something Europe certainly don't do. I feel like you're really making a change for individual people there.
Thank you, Vega.
No problem.
And I think it's also really cool because, as you said, these people have not seen what actually electricity is. So when they meet from the beginning eco-friendly solutions, other solutions that we use worldwide that are not eco-friendly will seem very not dumb to them. Like they see, for example, they can use solar panels with the amount of sun and how strong the sun is in Africa. And the same is also for Greece. We have a lot of sun in Greece. It's very warm here. So you can use that to your advantage and to create energy.
Yeah.
So everyone can donate, right? You should give us like the website so we can also put it in the link so people can go and donate. So the next topic I'll like to talk about is inequality and climate change and also climate activism. Do you guys want to say something to that on how it is, for example, in Uganda?
So about the inequalities, you know, people usually ask why it's mainly the girls or women driving the climate movement. But to me, the first thing that comes to me is that these people are the most affected when it comes to climate change, when it comes to climate impact, especially women from rural communities like in Africa. I would give an example. Rural communities of Africa, it is the women who put food on the table. It is the women who put water on the table. So in case of occurrences of maybe droughts or floods and these women lose everything that they have, planted in their farms. That means they have to try as much as possible to put food on the table. But where are they going to get this food? They're going to try and walk long distances, trying to, sell a few things that they have to try and put food on the table. They're going to walk very long distances because their nearest wells or springs are dried up. So they have to find a way of, getting water for their families. And at the end of the day, you realize that it is the women doing this work. And that is because it's the culture. That is how, it has always been. And, it really shows how much, women are affected by this thing. Yesterday I was watching news and they were talking about how women are being affected, how people are being affected amidst the issue of coronavirus. And they were talking about some people who are, attacked, and there were around, I think, 38 people. So the person who was reporting the news, he was like, 31 women were affected, and then plus seven men. Like he said it in our local language, and he made it look like, how can they 1 women? And that number didn't, worry him at all. But when he talked about the men that were affected, those were 7 men. He made it look like, oh my God, this is a big deal. So it showed me how much there is still inequality in the things that happen, in this world. If hurricanes happen, if floods happen, you think about the single mothers. Most of them are pushed to the streets with their children and with completely nothing, because they have lost their homes, they have lost their livelihoods and any form of hopes and dreams that they have. So they have to survive on the streets. But how do they survive on the streets? Some of them have to sell themselves in order to get food for their children amidst the impacts of climate change. Some of them, they have to face gender-based violence, like on the streets, because on the streets, it's the strongest people who survive. And in most cases, the men tend to have more, how should I explain? They have more, I think, muscle energy, something close to that. So if they were to, fight for maybe food or try to hustle and get some money, it is the women who are affected. And then you go to the girl child. There is an article that I read about that was talking about children brides, and these come about as a result of climate change. For example, if families have been depending on maybe a farm or maybe some spring or well, and then they lose everything as a result of climate change, that means they cannot take care of the children at home or the people at home. And many families have a tendency of having so many children in the rural communities in spite of their income levels. So when such disasters hit these families, their first thought is to at least give up the girl child, because they know with the girl child they're going to get some bride price that they can survive on for a while, and then the girl child is given out for marriage because they can be taken care of by their newly found husband. But no child, no 15-year-old or 17-year-old would really want to get married in such a situation. No child will want to get into marriage at that age. So it is quite disturbing to realize how much climate change affects women and how much their voices seem to be so unheard and not listened to by the people, because they are suffering, and they're suffering for their children, they're suffering for their husbands, they're suffering for so many things, and yet we are doing nothing at all. And when I look, there's so many impacts of climate change on women, and it's just so disturbing to realize how most of them have to give up on their dreams and hopes and plans for the future when a drought or floods or hurricanes strike and take away everything that they ever owned.
Another inequality that I've realized about climate change, the fact that it affects, when climate changes, it affects the low developed areas the most, because at least the developed countries, let me say the countries that are not in Africa, they have all the technology, they have all the resources to get solutions to all this climate change. But in Africa, imagine we had a problem of floods. Africa, most countries in Africa are very poor. The solutions and the help and the resources would not be so available, like the way they would be available in the USA, in some other countries. Yeah, so climate change leads to climate, and the very poor countries, the very poor people are the highly affected, because they don't have the resources to live with the current condition of the climate. Yeah, for example, if there's a lot of heat, you find that some people have solutions of using AC, of using temperature regulators, but in Africa, who can afford that? Like, very few people can afford that. Yeah, then you also talk about yeah, okay, that's it. Yeah.
So my question was, you Vanessa mentioned that often girls get married by the age of 16, so that their family can live on, and that they also get taken care of from their husbands. Does that also mean that in the schools, less girls are than guys?
Yeah, that's maybe in rural communities, especially with parents who don't have enough income to take all the children to school. So in most cases, the first priority to be taken to school is the boy child. Actually, it's with every family. If the money is not enough, the first priority is always the boy child and the girl child.
I was in Brussels a while ago, and they presented the new Green Deal in the EU, and the only thing that they said was that it would be carbon net neutrality by 2050, and it's almost as if they're just turning a blind eye to our neighboring continent completely, and it's just so frustrating to see that they don't they don't value Africa as much as they do Europe.
No, I really think it's a very big problem to actually think that they still have time to push all the solutions to maybe 30 years later, and yet there are people who started suffering 30 years before, so you're adding them more 30 years of agony and all kinds of suffering. So I really think it's a problem, and sometimes I think that the countries that have the power and the authority to implement the solutions that we need are only focusing on their nationals, and yet we cannot have climate justice if it is not global, because if we are to address it to save everyone.
Thank you both very much for taking your time and talking to us. Keep in touch, and yeah, I think this is that.
Yeah, it's really good talking to you guys.
Thank you too.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been good talking to you too. Thank you very much. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye, girls.
Okay.
Hey there, I'm Zhan. I'm 16. I'm from the United States. My message to world leaders is that even with the world on lockdown, the climate crisis is still here and needs immediate action. The coronavirus pandemic has exposed the deep inequalities in our society, which means our climate solutions must put justice and liberation at the forefront and in ways that don't further the inequalities in our society. Because currently the way world leaders are approaching the coronavirus epidemic is prioritizing large corporations over the people, and we can't have that for the climate crisis.
Hello, I'm Selin, and I'm a climate activist from Turkey. The climate crisis doesn't affect every community proportionally. More vulnerable communities, who are mostly dependent on natural resources and less able to defend themselves, are at a greater risk when compared with more privileged communities. That's why we're not on the same boat. We always stress the importance of equity when it comes to fighting with the climate crisis. And unfortunately, women commonly face higher risks and greater burdens from the impacts of climate change, especially in situations of poverty, compared with men. So there's also a feminist angle to this issue. Women's unequal participation in decision-making processes often prevent women from fully contributing to climate-related planning, policymaking, and implementation. My message to world leaders is that since women are affected even more than men when it comes to the climate crisis, they need to have a say while climate policies are being formulated and implemented. We, as women, should be involved in the process as much as men, because that's what democracy and equal representation looks like.